Hello, Laporte. We're going to keep reading Stuart Little. We left off in the middle of chapter 8. And Stuart's family took in that little bird. So I'm going to keep trying to do a singing voice, which is proving difficult. Okay, so we had just stopped with Stuart recommending to take her temperature. Here! And he tossed her the thermometer. Margolo put it under her tongue, and she and Stuart sat very still for 3 minutes. Then she took it out and looked at it, turning it slowly and carefully. Here is a picture of her taking her temperature. Look at how big the thermometer is in relationship to her body. That's so funny. Normal, she announced. Stuart felt his heart leap for gladness. It seemed to him that he had never seen any creature so beautiful as this tiny bird, and he already loved her. I hope, he remarked, that my parents have fixed you up with a decent place to sleep. Oh, yes, Margolo replied. I'm going to sleep in the in the Boston Fern on the bookshelf in the living room. It's a nice place for a city location. And now, if you'll excuse me, I think I shall go to bed. I see it's getting dark outside. I always go to bed at sundown. Good night, sir. Please don't call me sir, cried Stuart. Call me Stuart. Very well, said the bird. Good night, Stuart. And she hopped off with light, bouncing steps. Good night, Margolo, called Stuart. See you in the morning. Stuart settled back under the bedclothes again. There's a mighty fine bird, he whispered and sighed a tender sigh. When Mrs. Little came in later to tuck Stuart in for the night and hear his prayers, Stuart asked her if she thought the bird would be quite safe sleeping down in the living room. Quite safe, my dear, replied Mrs. Little. What about the cat Snowbell? Asked Stuart sternly. Snowbell won't touch the bird, his mother said. You go to sleep and forget all about it. Mrs. Little opened the window and turned out the light. Stuart closed his eyes and lay there in the dark, but he couldn't seem to go to sleep. He tossed and turned, and the bedclothes got all rumpled up. He kept thinking about the bird downstairs asleep in the fern. He kept thinking about Snowbell and about the way Snowbell's eyes gleamed. Finally, unable to stand it any longer, he switched on the light. There's just something in me that doesn't trust that cat, he muttered. I can't sleep knowing that Margolo is in danger. Pushing the covers back, Stuart climbed out of bed. He put on his wrapper and slippers. It's funny that they call it a wrapper, but it just means a robe, like his robe that wrapped around him, and his slippers. Taking his bow and arrow and his flashlight, he tiptoed out into the hall. Everybody had gone to bed, and the house was dark. Stuart found his way to the stairs and descended slowly and cautiously into the living room, making no noise. His throat hurt him, and he felt a little bit dizzy. Sick as I am, he said to himself, this has got to be done. Being careful not to make a sound, he stole across to the lamp by the bookshelf, shined up the cord, shimmied up, shined up the cord and climbed out onto the shelf. There was a faint ray of light from the street lamp. Outside, and Stuart could dimly see Margalo asleep in the fern, her head tucked under her wing, so her wing is kind of protecting her head. "Sleep dwell upon thine eyes, peace in thy breast," he whispered, repeating a speech he had heard in the movies. Then he hid behind a candlestick and waited, listening and watching. For half an hour he saw nothing, heard nothing but the faint ruffle of Margalo's wings when she stirred in dream. The clock struck 10 loudly, and before the sound of the last stroke had died away, Stuart saw 2 gleaming yellow eyes peering out from behind the sofa. "So," thought Stuart, "I guess there's going to be something doing after all." He reached for his bow and arrow. The eyes came nearer. Stuart was frightened. But he was a brave mouse. Even when he had a sore throat, he placed the arrow against the cord of the bow and waited. Snowbell crept softly toward the bookshelf and climbed noisily up into the chair within easy reach of the Boston fern where Margalo was asleep. Then he crouched, ready to spring. His tail waved back and forth. His eyes gleamed bright. Stuart decided the time had come. He stepped out from behind the candlestick, knelt down, bent his bow, and took careful aim at Snowbell's left ear, which was the nearest to him. "This is the finest thing I've ever done," thought Stuart, and he shot the arrow straight into the cat's ear. Snowbell squealed meow with pain and jumped down and ran off toward the kitchen. "A direct hit," said Stuart. "Thank heaven. Well, there's a good night's work done," and he threw a kiss toward Margalo's sleeping form. So here is a picture. You can see the cat is right in front of Stuart's bow, and then right here at the top, can you see Margalo? She's sleeping under her wing. It was a tired little mouse that crawled into bed a few minutes later, tired but ready for sleep at last. Chapter 9. A Narrow Escape. Margalo liked it so well at the Littles' house she decided to stay for a while instead of returning to the open country. She and Stuart became fast friends. And as the day passed, it seemed to Stuart that she grew more and more beautiful. He hoped she would never go away from him. One day, when Stuart had recovered from bronchitis, he took his new skates and put on his ski pants and went out to look for an ice pond. He didn't get very far. The minute he stepped out into the street, he saw an Irish Terrier. So he had to shinny up an iron gate. Shinny up? I always thought it was shimmy with an M. And jump into a garage can, where he hid in a grove of celery. Here is a little teeny tiny picture. There's Stuart in the celery grove, hiding. While he was there, waiting for the dog to go away, a garbage truck from the Department of Sanitation drove up to the curb, and 2 men picked up the can. Stuart felt himself being hoisted high in the air. He peered over the side and saw that in another instant, he and everything in the can would be dumped onto the truck. snowbound, now I'll kill myself, thought Stuart, so he ducked back into the can and waited. The men threw the can with a loud bump into the truck, where another man grabbed it, turned it upside down, and shook everything out. Stuart landed on his head, buried 2 feet deep in wet, slippery garbage. All around him was garbage, smelling strong. Under him, over him, on all 4 sides of him, garbage. Just an enormous world of garbage and trash and smell. Here he is. In the garbage. It was a messy spot to be in. He had egg on his trousers, butter on his cap, gravy on his shirt, orange pulp in his ear, and banana peel wrapped around his waist. It sounds like he lives with Sloane. I have all kinds of food all over me today, which I'm very glad that you can't see all the food on me from Sloane today via the video. Still hanging on to his skates, Stuart tried to make his way up to the surface of the garage, but the footing was bad. Footing is where you're placing your feet. He climbed a pile of coffee grounds, but near the top the grounds gave way under him and he slid down and landed in a pool of leftover rice pudding. I bet I'm going to be sick at my stomach before I get out of this. It's funny how they use different language back then. We would say get sick to our stomach, and in this it says I'm going to get to be sick at my stomach. I wonder why. He was anxious to work his way up to the top of the pile because he was afraid of being squashed by the next can load of garbage. When at last he did succeed in getting to the surface, tired and smelly, he observed the truck was not making any more collections, but was rumbling rapidly along. Stuart glanced up at the sun. We're going east, he said to himself. I wonder what that means. Here is a picture of the garbage man and the truck. It is so small I can't see Stuart. So I don't know if he's at the top or if he's in it. Or maybe he's in the can in this picture. I don't know. There was no way for him to get out of the truck. The sides were too high. He just had to wait. When the truck arrived to the East River, which borders New York City on the east, and which is a rather dirty but useful river, the driver drove out onto the pier, backed up to a garbage scow, and dumped his load. Stuart went crashing and slithering along with everything else and hit his head so hard he fainted and lay quite still, as though dead. He lay that way for almost an hour. And when he recovered his senses, he looked about him and saw nothing but water. The scow was being towed out to sea. So the good news is they did not drop all of this garbage into the river. The bad news is they dropped it onto kind of like this barge-looking boat here, and Stuart is stuck on it now in the middle of the river, headed out to the ocean. So I'm going to stop there because I want to hear your predictions about how in the world is he going to get back? How is he going to get back to his family if he's stuck in a trash boat at sea. I want to hear your creative, fun ideas. Do you think he's going to swim back? I don't remember, he's only like this big. That would be a really long swim. Do you think he's going to, I don't know, what else could he do? I can't wait to hear what you have to say, what you think is going to happen. Until next time, adios.